A lot of football. Johnny Mac's on the shelf today, but pinch hitting for him. Glad to have Turron Davenport from the USA Today to talk a little Eagles with us here on the Sports Bash. And Turron, welcome back, pal. Looking forward to the start of camp on Monday.
Hey, definitely looking forward to the start of camp, man. There's good things to come, you know. It's always good to be around the game, so I appreciate you guys having me on, too.
Yeah, man, and there was an article that you wrote over at USA Today. I opened up in the first hour of the show asking the question about Doug Pederson or anybody in general. Like, is 2 years really fair to judge someone's job performance? Like, if you got hired by the paper and you're writing, you know, and they said, you know what, 2 years, I just don't like your writing. I mean, is 2 years fair to judge someone's job performance?
I mean, I think it depends on the situation. I think 2 years is fair for someone in our industry. You know, the first year you go ahead and you develop the following, and then the second year you just reap the benefits from your following. So I think in media is a different story, but looking at with Doug Pederson, it's something else because, I mean, look at Lovie Smith. You know, the guy barely even he had 2 years there in Tampa, and they got rid of him. And now, look, the team is on an upswing because a lot of the players that he brought in are doing well for them. Now, obviously, Turron Werner, some of those guys are gone. But, I mean, bringing this back to Doug Pederson, you got to give a coach an opportunity to bring his guys in and install his scheme. This second year in 2017, you're going to see that offense be much better. And, you know, Pederson's a rookie coach, so he now has a year under his belt, so there will be some different things. I think it's way too early to judge him, though.
And then that leads us right into the article that you wrote that, you know, you think that he's facing some pressure this year to win. I mean, that they gave him some weapons. Hey, Doug, you know, last year we evaluated, you won 7 games with not a whole heck of a lot on offense. Well, we got you some offense, so now you must win. Is that how you're reading it right now with the Eagles front office on Doug Pederson?
Yeah, that article was actually written by one of the contributors to the site, but I definitely see where he was coming from. I think there's some pressure on Pederson just because it's really going to be important for him to help Carson Wentz take that next step. And so the different excuses that were given to Wentz last year are not going to apply this year if everything goes right, barring injury, obviously. You know, if Jason Peters plays all 16 or plays even 14 games at least, you know, you can't make the offensive line excuse because he has Jason Peters, he has Lane Johnson. If the receivers are there, you know, Alshon steps up and he's healthy, you can't make that excuse either about weapons, you know, with Zach Ertz and Jordan Matthews and the guys. So I think there's pressure on Pederson. I don't think it's as much in the wins and losses as much as it's just the play of Carson Wentz because he is the guy who has the responsibility squarely placed on his shoulders to help Wentz take that next step. And when you say that next step, I'm not saying 4,500 yards passing. I'm not even saying 4,000 yards passing. John DeFilippo, he talked about different areas in which they have to get things together as far as third down situations. You know, they have to be more efficient on third down. How could they do that? Not having penalties on second down that puts them in third and long. Situational football is going to be the area where Carson Wentz is going to need to grow. He's going to need to stop being inaccurate across the middle. Obviously, there were a lot of drops, but there were some balls that were behind his receivers that made it more droppable, so to speak. So I think Wentz is going to take that next step and be a much better quarterback this year. Again, I'm not saying 4,000 yards. I'm not saying 30 touchdowns, but I think he's going to help this team a lot more than he did last year.
Turron Davenport with us talking Eagles football. And Turron, back to Pederson for a minute. What are some of the things that you want to see him do better this year? What steps does he need to take as a head coach?
I think really what I want to see him do better is run the football more, be more committed to the run. There were some times where they abandoned the run, and I think having the bullpen that they have now, you know, with Wendell Smallwood obviously healthy, with LeGarrette Blount, with Darren Sproles, you got Pumphrey in there also. I think you're going to see more running the football, and that's just going to make things better for Carson Wentz. So that's an area where I think he needs to improve. I really like what he's done as far as going for it on fourth downs and you know, short yardage situations. I think that's a good thing, and that'll be benefited also from having Blount So, I mean, if there was an area for improvement, my whole thing would be running the football better.
Do they have upgraded personnel in that department, or is it the offensive line that maybe is going to be more solid this year, considering Lane Johnson back? What is the element that might make the running game better? A combination of both?
I think it's a combination of both, and I think you also have to factor in the trust side of things. You look, this is a team that lost 5 games by 7 or less points, right? You look at the Giants game, but more importantly, you look at their first loss, Ryan Matthews fumble, right? You look at the Cowboys loss. There was a late fumble by Wendell Smallwood, albeit Kelsey got blown up and thrown into him, and that caused the fumble to happen. But the fact of the matter is, LeGarrette Blount does not fumble. 299 carries last year. I think he had 1 or 2 fumbles out of all those carries. So now you have a guy, when it's time to get into that 4-minute offense, when you have a lead and it's time to put the game away, they're going to be able to do that with a guy like Blount. So that's where you got to commit to the run. Also, just looking at just keep going with it. Even if you're down by 2 touchdowns, keep going with the run and being successful with it. It's just a matter of just keep going. I mean, the best way to explain it is to continue to get those 2- and 3-yard gains, those 4-yard gains, with the understanding that it's going to pop into a 20 to 30-yard gain at some point if you commit to it. But if you just chip and don't come back to it, you're not going to find success.
Turron is a guy who played the position wide receiver, and from what you saw in minicamp, what do you know about Torrey Smith, Alshon Jeffrey? I mean, how many wins could just adding those guys really be worth?
Well, yeah, I have a history with Torrey Smith dating back to my days covering the Ravens. And I will say this, with Torrey, you're getting a guy that you could line up on the outside, and he will legitimately be a threat. He's going to push safeties back. He's going to cause coordinators to, want to at times use that bracket coverage over top. So that's going to open some things up. He's not a guy that's going to get you 60 catches for 900 yards and 10 touchdowns, but he's a guy that will just be effective for you. And I think he's a good option for them. He's also a veteran, a really good personality in the locker room. He's a guy that the younger guys can learn from as far as eye positioning and looking the football. And he's great for Agholor because he went through the same thing Agholor went through as far as becoming a more consistent catcher of the football, and that's something that you want to see from Agholor. Now, Alshon, the thing I like the most about Alshon is if you ever saw that movie Friday, the guy in there, his name is Debo, and that's what Alshon is. He's someone that as long as the ball is in his area, he's going to come down with it. So that's what you have to be, excited for. You're going to see Carson Wentz, and I talked to Carson about it. I talked to Coach Flip about it also. They're going to throw to Alshon even when he is covered. Depending on how that corner is covering him, they're going to throw it, whether it be a back shoulder fade, whether it be you just throw it up and let him go get the rebound. One way or another, they're going to give him an opportunity. So what you see is a safety net, a guy that Carson Wentz can really, really trust to come down with the football or at least not allow it to be intercepted. So that's the benefit with Alshon. It's just with him, he just has to be healthy. That's the main thing. If he could stay healthy, Alshon Jeffrey's a top 10 receiver, and I will go toe-to-toe with anybody who wants to disagree. Because when you look at what he brings to the game as far as a deep threat, as far as a guy that could be a red zone option, as far as a guy who could run that slant, break a tackle, and get you plenty of yards afterwards, a guy that could run that mid-range, that dig route, and use his size to make the catch, to create separation, a guy that could move inside and play the power slot. You name it, he could do it. So I think Alshon is going to be the biggest addition for that team.
But a guy like Nelson Agholor, because there's so much talk about Nelson Agholor as we get ready for this upcoming season. There's so much or so many people that are saying, like, look, it's too much hype. It's just helmets and T-shirts. But, we've heard that narrative. And years ago, they always said the third year is the breakout year for a wide receiver. Is he one of these guys who maybe we see break out, or will he even get the reps to break out?
Well, I think his situation is unique because first and foremost, you have to look at this. He came in with Chip Kelly and a scheme, and I talked to him about this last year at this time, and he said that it felt like he was running routes without a purpose. And when you're out there on the field and you don't feel like you have a purpose, you're not going to be effective. And I'm not making excuses for him. There were plays to be made that he didn't. So don't get me wrong. Then you look at last year, first year in the West Coast offense, it takes a little bit to catch on to that offense. So not only is he a guy that's coming into his third year, but he's a guy that's been in 2 different schemes in 2 years. So that's going to impact the player slightly. And now some guys it doesn't impact as much. You know, some guys are able to hit the ground running like Odell Beckham Jr. did. But not everyone is going to have that progression. For me, when I look at Alshon, it's a mental thing. I see him out there, and yes, it is just shorts and T-shirts, helmets, but what you're seeing is him catch the ball with more confidence. You see him literally snatch the football out of the air as opposed to, you know, just catching it. And that there's a big difference there. You see him with more bounce to him. You see him having fun in practice. Like things are fun for him again, and that's really what was lost on him over the last couple of years. Well, I'll say over last year because that's my experience with him. But when you have a guy that's back in love with the game, so to speak, and I'm not saying he never lost love for the game, but now he's in love with the game. And there's a difference between being in love and loving something. And you could just tell from how he lights up when he talks about football, how he is in practice or in the locker room even, just the way he walks around. There's a different energy, a different aura with him. So those are the things that are more positive. But then, I mean, he's making plays. Yeah, that's something to definitely hang your hat on. So I think it's going to be a good year for Agholor. I'm not saying 1,000 yards, but I think you're going to see flashes of the ability that made him a first-round pick. The talent's there without a doubt.
Yeah, you just wonder, are the reps there? I mean, the talent's there, are the reps there? I mean, who does he – if he's getting time, who's sitting? Who's not getting the time?
Well, the reps are going to be there. They're going to give guys opportunities. They'll run 4 receiver sets. Remember, their base is 3 receivers. So I would see him working a lot in the slot. I could imagine him working outside too, you know, at the Z position, not as much the X where he worked last year. I think he's a guy that can be reliable as far as getting the ball in his hands quickly and allowing him to make the catch and make something happen with his playmaking ability. So that's where I see him. They have a nice package where they'll get him the ball in space. You know, they'll run him on the jet sweeps. They'll run him on quick screens. But I think he really settled in at the slot position, and that's something that I wanted to see last year because I felt, like I said, he was playing out of position at X on the line of scrimmage. That's not his he's not that downfield, that vertical guy consistently, the one that you ask to do that all the time. So he's playing in position now. He knows all 3, all of the receiver positions, so that's a good thing. But he'll see a lot of time in the slot. I mean, they had a nice rotation. Obviously, Jordan Matthews went down. He didn't go down, but he was out with the injury. So we'll see how that whole rotation thing pans out. And I think that's an interesting thing with Carson Wentz because you have guys that are Alshon and Jordan Matthews, they're playing – this is a contract year. So both of them are going to want the football even more, you know. So it's going to be interesting seeing that whole dynamic play out.
Turron Davenport, USA Today, is with us here looking at the Birds. They start on Monday. Training camp open for business. We hear it every year, Turron. Zach Ertz, this is the year. I think if you look at his numbers, a lot of people would say, well, it's always at the end of the year, but his numbers seem to be more filtered out than people give him credit for last year. He had that little stretch coming off the injury where he didn't play well, and Pederson actually said it. Look, we got to do a better job. You know, he's in the game plan, but we got to do a better job getting him involved in the game. But for the most part, he had 77 catches last year. I think he has such a good finish that we kind of say, man, why doesn't he do this more consistently? But is this the year that he kind of puts himself into another category?
I think the potential to do that is there. And for those folks that say, oh, he is only productive when it doesn't matter or late in the season, there's more to it than just that. That's just an elementary way of looking at things. You have to understand the tight end and quarterback position, that combination is one that relies heavily upon chemistry, perhaps more than the receiver and quarterback bond, so to speak. When you look at a tight end, most of the routes that they're running are choice routes, Y stick routes, where they have to be on the same page. Carson Wentz has to know that Zach Ertz is going to break a certain way under a certain coverage and a certain way on another coverage. And that comfort level, because, you're throwing to a spot there just trusting he's going to be there. That comfort level, it takes a while to get to that. So I say all that to say this guy has had different quarterbacks. He's never had the same quarterback 2 years in a row, and that's not an easy thing to overcome as far as the chemistry side of things. I think what he's been able to do with the guys that he's worked with has been really good. Would you like to see him more effective in the red zone and score more touchdowns? No doubt about it. Would you like him to be a guy who could break some more tackles and get you more yards after the catch? No doubt about it. But I think Zach Ertz is rightfully placed, in the top part of the tight end rankings throughout the NFL. And we talk about ability, the guy could do whatever you want him to do. He could line up outside over the numbers. You put him in the slot. You flex him on a tight formation. You could run him in line. And he's a really good option. In my book, after Alshon, he's one of their top weapons, give or take Darren Sproles.
I like he's the guy I think has the steps up this year and has the big year. I think his numbers have been sneaky good. People look at him and say, well, they're all late. But I agree with you. A little elementary when you look at it because his numbers were pretty, I don't want to say consistent, but he had games early in the year, in the middle of the year. He just had he had that game, that like 3 or 4 game stretch where he had like one catch, 3 catch. But other than that, he was pretty good. We compared his numbers to Kelsey. And, pretty favorable. I mean, 85 catches for Kelsey in 16 games, 77 catches in only 14 games for Ertz. So I agree with you on Ertz. I think he's, can be much – I think he is more consistent than people give him credit for. Let's go over to defense real fast. Brandon Graham, he's a guy that the analytics and everybody loves. I think Eagle fans sometimes would say, man, how come people like this guy so much? Why should Eagle fans like Brandon Graham?
Yeah, and, before we get to BG, I want to say something else about Zach Ertz. If you look later on in the year, watch the way his targets increased. And that's just another testament to how he and Carson Wentz got on the same page even more as time went on. But as far as BG, I think for him, it's just the ability to be disruptive. It's the way he's able to get off the ball and get in the backfield. It's his high motor. He plays exceptionally well against the run also. So, yeah, you would definitely want to see him get more than 5.5 sacks, which I think he'll do this year. And it's really just a matter of just getting to the quarterback and taking him down. That's the main thing. And I think you combine that with what they have outside at corner, guys that are going to be able to press and be invited to get up on the line and be, disruptive as far as the timing is concerned. I think that's going to be a good thing for Brandon Graham. But he's a solid player. He's not that guy that's going to get you 15 sacks, but he's that guy that'll get you, 7 to 9 sacks and a bunch of QB hurries and play outstanding against the run.
Turron, the Eagles, they might have a good front seven, but will that even matter with the secondary? Isn't that the main focus starting on Monday?
Well, I think the secondary is probably something that you'll want to look at, but at the same time, you look at Jalen Mills. He's a guy, like I said, he likes to get up on the line and be disruptive. He's a guy that will be given the opportunity to be aggressive and jump routes the same way that Asante Samuel was given that freedom, and that just speaks to their trust in the safeties. They're going to have that coverage over top. Roddy McLeod, you'll see him in more center field situations. You'll see them give Malcolm Jenkins a chance to roam the field as well. I think they'll work a good deal of cover one, but you see a lot of cover two man also, which gives them that protection over top. You got two rangy guys. So I think the secondary is going to be fine. Rasul Douglas is a guy, obviously, I've been high on. We've talked about him numerous times. So I'm looking forward to seeing him just be able to use his physicality, because in minicamp OTAs, you can't be physical with the receivers as far as putting your hands on them at the line and that kind of thing. And that's something that Douglas does very well. In addition to that, you got Aaron Grimes. I think Aaron Grimes is a name to look out for. He's someone that could definitely take over that nickel spot. I could definitely see him as their nickel corner. Of course, right now the way it works is they have Jalen Mills bump inside from left corner, and Sewell Douglas goes to left corner with Patrick Robinson remaining on the right side. So we'll see how that works. But, with that pass rush, Derek Barnett, Chris Long, Vinny Curry, BG. You got the guys inside too, and Fletcher Cox as well as Timmy Jernigan. So there's going to be pressure, and that pressure busts pipes, man. You know how the saying goes. So that's only going to help the secondary, and I think it goes hand in hand.
Turron Davenport at @Davenport_NFL. Check him out over at the USA Today Eagles Wire. And we'll be burning up, of course, Monday outside, nice and hot at the NovaCare Complex for the start of Eagles training camp. Thanks, Bal.
You got it. Thank you.